Let's talk about the creation of invisibility, because we've talked about the different things that people like to buy and how strange it can get. But also, I hope you've learned a little bit about why, the kind of like behind that thought process, what's going through the buyer's brain. Because, I'll tell you, some of these really tough books, these scarce books, they're ones you think about. They're the ones that you may never see again, right? And that's an aspect of scarcity and FOMO, but also it's like the funnest part of the collectible. But everybody's different. Well, we're going to talk about the creation of invisibility. We've been teasing it all podcast. But before we do that, we have to talk about a bad idea, terrible idea, something that is so out there that many people think it's like the worst way to create and distribute comic books. But you know what? As soon as you say that it sounds like a bad idea, you are now falling into the brilliance of the marketing. We're talking about bad idea comics.
Yeah, I'm going to refer this to Russ. The better the LCS discuss bad idea than myself.
So when I first heard about Bad Idea Comics, it was one of those things that, I kind of agreed it was a bad idea. And this is not just a play on the name, but when they had all of these restrictions over what you needed to do to be able to be a person who could be... First of all, you had to throw the name of your shop into a special ring and then kind of justify your existence and then tell them why it would be a good idea to let you sell Bad Idea comic books. And it was something that a lot of shops I know applied for it, and very, very few were approved. I think in the very opening wave, there were only 25 shops all across the country that were even allowed to sell these comic books. So it wasn't on a lot of people's radars. People online knew about it. Instagram people were talking about it. They heard about some of these comics, and they're like, hey, do you know if you'll be able to sell a Bad Idea? And I said, probably not, because it was such a tough thing to get into. So all of a sudden, people don't know what's happening. They get a special package in the mail of this comic book that they had never heard of, some promotional ash can called Hero Trade, that ends up being the first Bad Idea ash can. People didn't know this at the time, and all of a sudden we've got a website out. There's the name of a bunch of shops, but people still don't know what books they're able to sell. Then we start hearing about this one comic that's coming out, the ENIAC comic, which all of a sudden everyone wants but sells out immediately. And for the people that couldn't get them, what are they going to do when they can't get first prints? Oh, Bad Idea's got another good idea. Let's do the not first print comic book. So people who wanted ENIAC but didn't get how many of the first prints were there? Do you know?
I don't know what
3,000? I heard it was a very small print run.
Yeah, it had to have been a small print run. And then, as you mentioned, and to catch people up, just in case you're not following this, is a standard, just independent publishing company called Bad Idea, and they make comic books, and they're doing it in a unique way at this point in time. And they put out an issue number 1, and they sold out because there's only so many stores that can even hold them.
Right.
And it was aggressive, and it was a tough book to get, so it was valuable. This was a company created by Dinesh Shandasani, as well as other members that have teamed up with him in the past. This is a former owner of Valiant Comics who sold the company. Very successful, one of the biggest art collectors in the world. So this is someone who loves comics, who really knows comics, but he also knows the collectible very well. Creating a cover A that was never going to go back to print.
Right.
Preserves cover A. Had to get me some comic butch. So instead of going second, third, fourth printing, they made a not first printing that they publicly stated they would go back to the well on. They would reprint to the end of time. So if you wanted to get the comic book, you can. They'll reprint it eventually, but essentially killing the market on the not first printing, but preserving issue A as the collectible. This right here had some of the most thought out intentions to preserve and create a collectible comic book and to serve the collector's market, the aftermarket. And they would go on to make a handful of books. We would get Whalesville, we'd get Tankers, we would get Pirate Queen.
Yeah,
right?
They had that really passive-aggressive book where they were actually entirely different, stuff on the inside. Right, and it's great to be able to see that. Dinesh Shamdasani is an absolute marketing genius. And for every single time someone tries to talk negatively anything about this company, you just go, there is a genius there. When they had the website where you had to click the button before they started a company,
what was it? Click the button and we'll start a company and write a comic book. And it was just like people had to click a button on a website, and eventually it hit the number, and they started a comic book.
And then they actually had a countdown to when they were going to fold the company and go out of business. Because right now, as of this second, Bad Idea Comics is no longer a comic book company.
Oh my gosh, you're following, and we're gonna get to invisibility in this commentary, comic fam. Karma Chameleon. Bear with us. Hit the likes off the subscribe button. But you're right. They would market that they were ending their titles.
Yep.
And they closed shop.
Mm-hmm.
But then they came back as a donut company. We got to get through Doughnuts before we can talk about invisibility, damn it. This donut company launched, and it was like at South Carolina Comic-Con. Bad Idea shows up as Bad Idea Doughnuts because that's the official new company brand. And they sold a box with the donut in it that came with a free comic book.
If you were paying attention to Instagram, yes, Bunsen Beaver. If you were paying attention to Instagram that weekend, the slew of pink boxes was absolutely insane. All I could see the entire time was, I got my pink box. I got my pink box. People were excited about this donut company. People weren't even really talking about the comic book until the week afterwards, when I think the people who hadn't been paying attention went, oh, there's a new comic out that I'm supposed to be paying attention to. Because it was all about the donuts in the boxes at first, and then it was about the comic.
Well, yeah, because you think you got a free comic book. It's by this company. People are waiting in line. Yeah, it's silly. But then the book and the boxes started selling for like $100, $150 a set. So the idea is that it's probably not a good idea to close up shop and then come back as a donut company when it's like, yes, it's satire, comic fam. It's all satire. But it adds to the collectible because of the way it was created, the way that it was deployed. Mm-hmm. And shout out Nate Made It, by the way, who is an artist that works for us. He works with the channel.
Right.
Who is actually the designer of the logo of the donut. Did you guys know that?
Oh, yeah. So
like
cool.
The donut logo on that pink box. He's the person who created that image. But yeah, he's like working with Dinesh. Dinesh is a homie of so many members of the comic community.